is Stephanie Alvarez, who is behind me here, and is a professor here in the College of Arts and Humanities. Some time ago, maybe about 7-8 months ago or so, she found out that there was a Bracero program traveling exhibit that was a product, a production of the Smithsonian. And so it was touring the country, and I don't know where it was when you found out about it, maybe in San Marcos perhaps?
2 years ago.
2 years ago, all right. So it's been a while ago when she found out about this, and I, she probably in conversation mentioned it to me, I don't know when, maybe about a year ago, 6-7 months ago, although it seems like more than 6-7 months. So she then, talked about this Bracero program exhibit that was traveling the country, and said that she and a few other faculty members were very interested in bringing it to UT Pan America. And so I became very interested in that as well. And so my story, my point of entry with this is really this. I have a 75-year-old father. I have a 77-year-old mother. My 75-year-old father did not come as a bracero. Él se creó en Dr. Cos, Nuevo León. He used to come across, as he calls it, as a mojadito. Cruzaba el río, trabajaba, se iba para atrás, para el rancho, de vez en cuando cruzaba el río, trabajaba y buscaba la migra para que le dieran right. ¿Por qué te ríes, Cristian? Because it's a cool story, right? It's a very cool story. And so my father is actually from the generation of the Braceros. I mean, the Bracero generation is really, kind of expansive, about a 20-year period there. But my father was very ill last year. And so he went through a series of surgeries, and we actually thought that we might lose my father last summer. And so my father and I, of course, have always been very close, and all my brothers, and with our parents, with my mother and my father. But every time that my mother or my father has suffered, physically or sometimes emotionally or whatever, I try to do something in my work to enliven, rejuvenate, revitalize my parents somehow. Y so mi papá estaba bien débil como en agosto del año pasado. Y más o menos en ese entonces cuando yo creo Stephanie y yo estuvimos platicando, and I remembered, that what she had talked about the Bracero exhibit, and so I immediately thought, you know what? I'm going to do something about my own work, as I had done in previous semesters, with my classes, try to connect them somehow to something that is interesting and important. And so you all remember, those of you who were in my class last semester, when I said to you, I asked you actually, does anybody know what a bracero is? ¿Y qué dijiste tú, María?
I don't know.
You didn't know. Maria, of course, comes to class the very next week and says, you know what, my grandfather was a bracero. Y me acuerdo que Idalia también. Idalia, ¿qué dijiste tú? Idalia said, I have no idea what a bracero is. She comes back a couple weeks later saying, my grandfather is a bracero. And so, to me, those were really, really powerful stories. And I thought, okay, this is an opportunity to have people connect somehow. Con familiares, con gente de la comunidad, or somehow, right? And it also gave me, this is very selfish, it gave me the opportunity to get my father, out of the house and to give him some new life. And as my father does, my mother does as well. So le hablé a mi papá y le dije, papi, vamos a hacer unas investigaciones con braceros. And so I knew about braceros because I grew up, right, listening to stories of mis tíos que eran braceros y otras gentes de la familia que eran braceros. Y le dije, papi, búscame braceros, porque los queremos entrevistar. And by the very next day, mi papá me dijo, oye, mijo, Pancho Lechero fue bracero. Y este otro señor fue bracero, y este otro, whatever. So he became the lead researcher for us in many ways. Right? Other lead researchers, of course, emerged, such as Idalia, who said, mi abuelo, and other people, como Mario, who went to the teacher's lounge at his school and said, you know what, I talked up the bracero story, and I have a colleague who said, my father's a bracero, and I want my father to be interviewed. So así empezó, donde empezamos a ir a la comunidad And my father had a bounce in his step, almost immediately. And so I was very happy about that. You know, because not only was I engaging in a research and academic exercise in some way, but as I was also engaging in a very social, cultural, and familial exercise with my own father and my own mother. And so my parents now, during the last 7, 8 months, have been to, I don't know, maybe a dozen oral histories. Porque van y se sientan ahí con las gentes, con la gente grande. ¿Te acuerdas, Idelia, cuando fue mi papá y mi mamá con tus abuelitos? Y comenzaron a platicar, and so it becomes a very rich kind of experience. So for me, as a professor here, I always try to connect whatever I do in my professorial work, my scholarly work, to my own personal life. Because it makes my professional work rich, and so I like it. It gives me some sort of fulfillment. And I figure that, si acaso me siento yo así, yo sé que los alumnos quizás también se sientan así. And I've actually heard it from you. You know, I've heard from you in your own reflections, in your own writings, you know, in your own argumentation, how it is that you see this as meaningful. So I'm thinking, that's a good formula. I'm sticking to that formula. Por ahorita, right? Until I become convinced that it's not good. But I don't think I'm going to be convinced of that. So that's part of the reason that we're here. I can't speak for Stephanie Alvarez, but all I can say is that I've actually followed her lead on this. Because she was the one who was saying, we need to do this, we need to do that. You know, and some of us move it, well, we all move at different speeds, right? She happens to move at a speed that's like, boom, like this. And so, you know, others of us kind of sort of try to follow and stuff. And so I have to thank her for putting it out there. And I also want to thank my students for being yeoman workers throughout this whole process. You know, and I want to thank also la gente de la comunidad, estudiantes y otros. El señor que acaba de entrar ahorita, ¿quién es usted, señor?
Jesús Zapata, profesor en SBC.
Very good. Jesús Zapata, you got a great name. Religious and revolutionary at the same time. Bueno, ahora se lo voy a pasar al maestro de ceremonias aquí, el señor Luis Bocanegra. Thank you very much for coming.
Buenas noches, como el profesor Guajardo dijo, mi nombre es Luis Bocanegra, soy un maestro de cuarto año en el distrito de La Joya y el semestre pasado empecé mi maestría in Educational Leadership, which led me to Dr. Guajardo's class. So we're sitting there one day and he says, we're going to put a conference together, we're going to write a book, we're going to do this and that. I'm thinking, oh my God, we're going to do all these things and I'm going to have the opportunity to be part of it. So here we are tonight, you know, a semester later, and we're actually seeing it unfold. I'm going to just touch on a little bit on what Dr. Guajardo said. This actually is a showcase of all the collaborative work that was done by the Department of Educational Leadership, Voces, Mexican American Studies, and the Center for Bilingual Studies, and of course, most importantly, the community, because all these stories came from members of the community. That perhaps if we hadn't done this project, their stories would have never been told. They would have never been captured. So then they would have been, you know, lost in limbo. On a personal note, when we interviewed one of the Braceros, his name is Hector Perez, we discovered that, you know, in a single man, he portrayed this figure of just, you know, he never wanted to give up. He always kept striving for his family. And he had his goals set very well, and he just, you know, he kept pushing, he kept going. And now, he came over as a bracero, and today, he's the owner of the land that he worked on as a bracero. So, that's one of the examples that, you know, some of us would have never learned or even heard about had it not been for this type of a project. Also, eye-openers. This was a big eye-opener for a lot of us. You know, sometimes we sit there and we listen to our well, I'm going to say a story, not a story, but I'm going to talk about an experience that I also went through. I lost my grandpa a couple of years ago, maybe two years ago, and I never had the opportunity to sit and listen to his stories. By the time I was of age, he was already, in his elder part of his life. So I wasn't able to experience the sit down and storytelling with him. So when I sat there that afternoon with Mr. Perez, I thought, man, this man has amazing stories. I wonder what stories my grandpa could have told me. So then I thought, my grandma can tell me his stories and her stories together. Okay? So then, had it not been for this, and this is, if you think about the bigger picture in this, we learn ourselves as individuals through these elders who we have no connection to other than, we're here to interview you. But yet, we walk away with so much knowledge from them. And in a matter of maybe an hour and a half. Continuing on, I'm just looking at my notes real quick. Tonight, of course, as you guys can see, we're going to have a panel discussing the mural that's being created in the city of San Juan. And following that, we will have a documentary titled Harvest of Loneliness, which was produced by Gilbert Gonzalez. And then tomorrow, which is the actual conference where our elders will be joining us, we'll be convening at the Visitor Center at 8:30 in the morning, so we hope we see you all there. We can have some nice hearty breakfast. After that, we'll go ahead and commute here to EDCC 1.102, where we will have the Voces de Braceros, which is going to be a panel of all the braceros that we interviewed. So imagine being, an elder, and you sit in front of all these people, and you get to tell them all your story. Okay? Now we're taking these people; they're ordinary people from the community who are being brought to a university, and this is about them. Okay? Just keep that in mind that this elder was sitting in his porch the day before yesterday. Then here comes some students. They interview him. They give him a documentary. They're gonna give him a spotlight for a whole afternoon, and it's just gonna be about them. So that's something that we can also feel real good about, because some of us, or most of us, were part of that for them. And then after that, we'll go to EDCC 2102, which is upstairs, if I'm not mistaken. And from 12 to 1:30, we're going to have a reception. Okay, that's where we get to eat. Everybody looks forward to eating, so that's where that'll take part. And then we'll close the day back down at EDCC 102 at 1:30, where we'll watch a documentary titled Voces de Braceros del Valle. And if I'm not mistaken, that was put together by Sam and his wife, Focabet. Okay, so we're anxious to see that. And with further ado, I'm gonna invite Dr. Alvarez, who's the director of the Mexican American Studies, and who's the person, of course, who's been laboring over all this, and she will facilitate the first event tonight. So, Dr. Alvarez.
Thank you very much for all of you being here, and I want to especially thank all the students who have been working really hard to make all of this possible. Everyone that was here today all day long and the many days previous to this. And Francisco's pretty funny, huh? He says that I move like this, and all of you who know me know that's true, but he's probably just as fast, if not faster than I am, running along with everything. But today, right now, we're going to talk about a mural project that we have going on in the city of San Juan to honor braceros and farm workers. And I think we're just starting. I think that all of you will find it very interesting that how many people are involved in making this happen, and how many different groups of people have come together. And so I don't want to go too far into it, because I want to let them talk about this so that you can see exactly what has happened throughout this process. And we'll start with Ileana Vasquez, who is a Mexican American Studies major and the co-treasurer of the Mexican American Studies Club. And we'll follow with Amy Cummins, who is a professor of English. And then we will go on with the mayor of San Juan, Juanita Sanchez. So she will explain the interest of San Juan in doing this project. And then we'll move on to students who have been working on raising money for this project themselves, Cosecha Voces and Fayora. And then we'll finish with John Michael from Lupe to talk about their role in all of this. So, again.
Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
when she originally came up with this idea to have a mural. We were actually studying Chicano murals, and we were watching Chicano Park when she had brought up this idea to actually have a mural here in the valley. And so Dr. Alvarez was kind of iffy about the idea whether it was actually gonna come into fruition. But a couple of us students actually decided that this is actually a great idea, and this will actually enrich the valley and our history here, and we'll actually be educated in what we lack in some of our school systems, like that they teach us. So, and I was especially drawn to this project, especially when she mentioned Braceros, because my grandfather was actually a Bracero. And I know that a whole bunch of us here are actually affected, whether directly or indirectly, from these guest worker programs. And if it wasn't for this program, I would probably not be here, because my grandfather would not have brought my dad here, and my parents would never have met. So I decided to actually become a part of this project. And actually, I became a part of Mexican American Studies Club, and the Mexican American Studies Club actually was kind of going through a rough spot there, but we actually brought it back because of this program, this project. And we actually fundraised, our class fundraised, including with Voces and mosque, and we did a barbecue plate sale, and we actually did a bake sale with Voces as well, and we did manage to raise some money from it. That's pretty much it.
Dr. Alvarez began the process of getting the Bittersweet Harvest Bracero program exhibit to come here to campus. And to help it have a lasting impact on the valley, she needed to apply for a Smithsonian Institution grant that funds related projects. So, in October 2011, Stephanie invited faculty affiliated with Mexican American Studies, or people who teach classes that are listed for it, like my children's literature class. So she sent a call out inviting us, hey, do you want to help write this grant? The mural project grant would help honor the Braceros and the farm workers of the valley while preserving the collective historical memory of their contributions to society. And I know all of us in this room have been positively impacted by this experience so far. It's going to be even greater when the mural is up. It's going to be so exciting. Now the grant we were applying for would cover only $5,000. And about 6,000 more would have to be raised by volunteers, such as UTPA students, the Mexican American Studies Club, Voces, harvesting and documenting the voices of migrants, and many community resources. So a ton of people have helped to raise all the money. But the grant was the first step, because we needed that 5,000. And it would also help to build the Mexican American Studies program and contribute to building a larger community. As I found, Stephanie Alvarez, Dr. Alvarez, has this way of inspiring people to want to work. A lot of you have experienced this, and of sharing this excitement for a project. So she got volunteers really quickly, and each of us were assigned just a little piece of the whole. She broke it down so we could do it. And so they included people from English, philosophy, and art departments at UTPA. So it was Mariana Alessandri, Alex Stain, Carlos de Souza, Kamala Platt, me, and I think some other people helped edit it too later. Now she had to write parts and put it all together. And then she sent it back out to the co-authors so that we could all electronically work on improving it to make it really solid. And that's the power of teamwork and of her leadership, because we got the good word that the grant was being given by the Smithsonian Institution. And that's how more and more people could get involved and raise the other money. But we had to get a location to have the mural, and that also has been kind of years in thinking, right, Eliana? I mean, where should it be? So I'll turn it over to the mayor.
Thank you. I think that as a leader in your community, we demands with the funds that we have. When we were approached by Dr. Alvarez and her team and our young folks here who are definitely very, very inspiring, it was not a difficult decision, but it was one that we had a lot of thinking into doing and into making that decision. And I think that the decision that is made has different levels of effect. I think it's global, community, and personal. On the global level, it's like if you've traveled outside of this country or even out of the state or out of the valley, one of the ways that we get to know the people of the region is by not just looking at what is present through buildings or talking to the people, but their past through art and through a story that is told by depicting from someone's thoughts and inspiration of what represent that community, what represented that era and that time. And wherever you travel, that's one of the things that's always really impressive is what was happening at the time, what was that person thinking, what was coming from it, and how much we learned. On the community level, which is the one where we as a commission had to make a decision, was who would not want to have that opportunity, and opportunity was wonderful when they knocked at our door, to bring to light the life of your community. Our community is one community, it's a very young community, but it's one that the majority of the people have their basis or their origin coming from Bracero and from migrant workers. And still to the day, we have a lot of migrant workers in our community. Who would not want to have an opportunity to put that and memorialize it on a mural? When we got together to think about it, I think it was a no-brainer. We want it. What goes behind the scenes is how do we fund it? We're very pleased that fundraisers are being done. Our contribution from our community, and it's not ours, but the community itself, is between, I believe, 13 to 16,000. I think the effect that it has in the lasting value is far more than what is being invested. And we're very grateful to the community for allowing us to do that. We're very pleased that San Juan was chosen, and I think because as you get to know our people, you will understand where the heart is. The location that has been looked at is one that right by our municipal park, where everyone can come to see, whether you're from there, from outside, but you get to see it, and we're very excited that our community is being asked to contribute. What do you want to see? And I think as leaders of our community, we are very pleased about that and that opportunity, very, very grateful. At personal level, which only has a small importance because this does belong to the community, but on a personal level, I am the youngest of a family of 10. I am a migrant farm worker when I was growing up. I started working at the age of 9, stopped working at 21, only because I got a degree here from UTPA. So it's very dear to the heart of myself and our community members to be able to share that. So when we are long gone, as we go see in many other places, the story remains. And it's wonderful that you're a part of what will define what was happening now, what was happening at that time, and to be such a central part of it. The names will disappear, and perhaps the details may not be around, but what is a lasting impression is what we look forward to, that inspires still another generation and many to come. So we're very grateful for being chosen. We're grateful for the partnership, and we hope that we can find many other walls to contribute to the CSN1. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Erika Salamanca, president of the student organization Cosecha Voices. Cosecha Voices is a student organization that through our voices, we are able to share our stories to the community about our migrant experiences in the field, in the farm worker. And Cosecha Voices became involved with the Bracero, bringing the Smithsonian Institute to the university, and we were also involved with the Bracero Oral History Project. With the development of the mural, Cosecha Voices was having hardships. We were actually thinking of ways of how to bring the class back to the university, but we were having rough times. So we decided that we couldn't have the class, but maybe we can have this mural. So we decided to tackle on raising the funds, and we came up with the fundraising of a car show. Now this car show, we planned it since last semester, and we kind of wanted it fast because
the mural was nothing official and we really wanted it. We decided that it was something important to have in our community. So together with the new interest group, Fiat, we organized ourselves and we planned. We had like 3 months of planning to create this car show. So in January 2012, La Raza Car Show, as we named it, became official in the student parking lot, and it was a success. Aside of being the first event this big that we had created since the beginning, we had over 75 cars and trucks participate. We had 15 student organizations from the university fundraise for their own benefits. We had a DJ for music, and we also counted with the presence of the mayor, San Juanito Sanchez, and that really, like, we felt that we were doing a good job because we felt the support. Maybe the students that went didn't know the importance, but for us it was really something. So thanks to our car show, we were able to provide funds for this mural, and from then on it became something that we feel proud of. And as Cosecha Voces, we have provided funds for this mural. And now I'm gonna head the mic to my my buddy that is also a Cosecha Voces mentor, but he will be speaking on his part of how Fiat became involved with our car show.
Thank you. My name is Andy Martinez. I'm part of a new Greek organization on campus. We are known Phi Iota Alpha. During the car show, we're an interest group. We've been an interest group for the whole semester, last semester, and well, now thankfully we're finally a colony at university. So our interest was to be a Greek organization, and now we are Phi Iota Alpha. The reason that we decided to help out with this mural was because of the importance we felt for the Braceros. As Dr. Guajardo mentioned, I didn't know what a bracero was when they first asked me last semester. I'm like, yeah, do you know what a bracero is? I'm like, well, no. And they're like, well, where have you been all your life? Like, you know your history or what? Like, well, okay. So I put a little bit down, but yeah, now I know what braceros is, and I researched a little bit more into it, and well, I was real inspired by all the stuff that I didn't know that had happened to people from our race back in that era. And then I found out that my grandpa was also a bracero for the last few years of that era. Also, his brother Luz Guerra Martinez, which is a bracero, we interviewed him, me and my prima and I, and well, it was that even inspired us even more. So I said, you know what, it'd be a real good idea to have something to inform the public that doesn't know of what braceros are. Like myself and my Phi Iota Alpha blind brothers they also weren't informed of what it was. So thankfully with the car show we didn't raise the full amount of funds, but it was starting, and hopefully now in the future we'll be able to get the mural done with more car shows or something. I hope so. But thanks to I would like to give thanks to the Mayor of San Juan for letting us be a part of having a mural in San Juan and supporting us in what we believe we would like to do. So thanks. Oh, and now we would like to present a video that was created by Palmira Cepeda on the car show. sorry for the technical difficulties, but it was still good. So now here's 5 minutes at that. Belinda, sorry.
Good evening. My name is Belinda Lopez. I'm a graduate student here in the Interdisciplinary Studies program. I am also part of Cosecha Voices and part of Dr. Guajardo's class. I've been pretty involved with Cosecha Voices, bringing the Bracero exhibit down to UTPA, and I've participated in a couple of Bracero interviews as a camera person, not an actual But I will be talking a little about the surveys we made. After having done the car show to raise funds, we also, Cosecha Voices united with Lupe, La Unión del Pueblo Entero, and with the help of Mexican American Studies, the Fraternity Phi Iota Alpha, and Sigma Lambda Beta completed over 140 surveys. We began with the questionnaire on March 31st, 2012 in the 9th annual Cesar Chavez March in San Juan. The purpose of the survey was to go out to the community and ask the people, we went there because that's where the mural will be located. We went there and asked the people what they would like to see in the mural, or what they would like represented in the mural, because their mural. It was a great experience having to talk to a lot of people and see that many felt that things should be done to represent them and represent the migrant farm workers and the braceros, and requests found from our small survey we did. I'll just say a couple that were Cesar Chavez, the fields, this is what the community would like to see represented in the mural. Children in the fields, personas trabajando, migración, no migra, una camioneta con camper, and troca, costales, braceros, and amongst a lot of things out. Right now, we will show a video while we were doing the interview, while we were marching. We have a picture with the organizations with the before picture of the mural, and hopefully we can later show you the after part. Thank you. Oh, I hope this video, you can see it.
name is John Michael Torres, and I work for La Unión del Pueblo Entero, and I'm here on behalf of our directora, Juanita Valdez-Cox. She couldn't be with us tonight, so I'm going to be reading a statement prepared by her and also adding a couple of comments. We've been working with Dr. Alvarez and her students, and this has really been a great experience for us to see so many young people that have been really passionate about this idea, and knowing that the young people are the ones who are really making this, like taking this forward, making it their own, and making it happen is very inspiring. So I'm going to read her statement and then make a couple of comments really quickly. Okay. La Unión del Pueblo Entero supports Dr. Alvarez and her students in their work on the mural depicting the story of the Braceros. The mural and the stories that the students are gathering will bring to light the contributions and the suffering of thousands of Mexican farm workers who answered the call to come to this country and help the farmers and ranchers during a difficult time. Unfortunately, many workers return to their homes in Mexico without the fair wages and working conditions they have been promised. The farm worker movement has a long history here in South Texas of working with and supporting the Braceros as well as their families. We are proud of our shared heritage and thankful for the many good things that resulted from the Bracero program. At the same time, we recognize the many injustices suffered by the Bracero workers and remain vigilant to fight for the rights of all workers without regard to their national origin. That is why this project is so important. It will help all of us remember both the good and the bad that came from the program, so we'll not be tempted to repeat those mistakes. And that idea of repeating those mistakes is very important right now in our country. And it's always been we have always been a country that workers have come from other nations to come and find a better life, to find jobs so they can provide for their families. But we're seeing that there's a huge need for folks to come from other countries, especially Mexico, to come and work here in the United States. And we have to recognize that the Bracero program was such a big part of the history of the farm worker movement precisely because it ended. And the reason that I say that is because during the Bracero program, when farm workers would stand up for their rights, when they would speak up, when they would denounce injustices, they were legally and quickly deported. The end of the Bracero program was actually the moment when the United Farm Workers was able to begin to organize and really fight for the dignity and respect that farm workers deserved. And if the early United Farm Workers organizers were hanging out with us today, they would tell you the same thing. It was really the end of the Bracero program that allowed for the fight for justice to happen in the fields. And so we have to recognize that when workers are easily able to be deported, then that really decreases people's voices, their power, their ability to speak up for what's right. So we need to recognize that as we're working for immigration reform, as we're working for a worker visa program that is just and dignified, that we cannot allow ourselves to repeat the same mistakes as the Bracero program. Just one other thing to add to this is that the current system for worker visa program, the H-2A program, although it's very few people who are able to get worker visas, it includes many of the same aspects of the Bracero program, where when farm workers begin to organize, when they begin to say that they have the right to organize, the right to have a voice on their job, they're very easily able to be deported. And so we need to recognize that. We need to reform the worker visa program, and we need to extend the ability to work to those people who have the ability to, who want to, have the desire to, and we need to pass an immigration reform that recognizes that. And then one other thing also to add to that is that, or to add to this whole thing, is that we're really excited about this mural adding to San Juan. We're also already thinking of ways to integrate it into the next Cesar Chavez March and the different activities that we're organizing in the community. And we would like to extend the invitation to all of y'all to come to our offices and check out the murals that are on our property, because that also has a little bit of the farm worker movement history. So y'all are welcome to come by our office, check out the murals that we have on the property, ask one of us for a little bit of explanation of why they're there. Of course, we're always super busy, but try to find us at a, in a moment when we're not so busy, and we'll explain what the murals represent and the history of them. And so you're definitely welcome to come and visit us. We're on the corner of Cesar Chavez Road and Expressway 83 Business 83 in San Juan, Texas. So thank you very much for this opportunity, and hope you all have a good night.
So I want to thank all of our panelists for being here and taking the time out of their busy schedules. I know the mayor was stuck in a hailstorm in McAllen, and I said, just come, we'll get you in, don't worry, and she's here. I'll fix your we'll do another car show. I hope that you are as impressed with me as me, not with me, but we are, with what these collaborations are able to do. I mean, this has all really come about from Cosecha Voices. Cosecha Voices last spring, we went to Michigan State University. We were invited to Michigan State University to present our program. And while we were at Michigan State University, we met Chuy Ramirez. And Chuy Ramirez is a lawyer here in San Juan. And when I saw Chuy, we started talking, and I said, we're trying to bring this exhibit from the Smithsonian Institute, but I'm really not getting any interest from the university here. He said, well, how much is it? I said, well, it's gonna be like $2,500. And he said, well, come see me. And so when we came back, I said, hey, Chuy, remember me? And we started a really nice relationship. Chuy is actually also somebody of great meaning to the city of San Juan. As a young man, a senior in high school, he led the campaign of what would be the first Chicago mayor of San Juan. And he's a graduate of UTPA as well. But because of Cosecha Voices and the work that they do, we made that connection. Otherwise, we wouldn't have the Bracero exhibit here. And when Ileana talks about what happened in class that day, actually that summer prior, we had had a meeting at Lupe in Alton about the mural, because students were getting excited about the mural, especially Cosecha Voices. So we had a meeting at Lupe in Alton. And we started talking, and it just seemed like this was never going to happen. Until a number of things happened. And one was that Chuy Ramirez said, let's go talk to the city of San Juan about this. And he arranged a meeting between Cosecha Voices, students from the class, with the mayor and other city council members and community members. And they, just like the mayor said, they were like, let's do it. Okay? And this was like, what, October? So for the city, a city government to move this quickly on something is really meaningful. And Cosecha Voices, they said, okay, let's do a car show. I was like, okay, let's do a car show. They did that whole thing. I have never been so impressed with them. I mean, they do some impressive stuff, those of you who know about Cosecha Voices. As that, those type of things really don't happen at UTPA often, and especially completely run by students. And Ileana, in the class, we always do a week and a half on murals, and it's always like the students' favorite part of the class. I turned off the documentary Chicano Park, and I said, what do you think? First thing someone says is, I want to go there. I want to see that place. And I said, why? She's like, I've never seen anything like that. And then everybody else said, we want to go too. I said, okay, you guys organize, I'll sponsor you, I'll take you. You guys raise the money, I'll take you. And then I remembered, 2 years ago, these Cosecha Voices students were in California, presenting at UC Irvine. And on the trip, we also presented in San Jose. They also went to Disneyland. They went for free because they volunteered on a special thing where you got a free day at Disneyland. And I said, what was your favorite part of the trip? I thought they were going to say Disneyland. No, their favorite part of the trip was San Francisco and seeing the murals in San Francisco. And going to a museum in San Jose that exhibited Chicana art. And I said, really? I was surprised. I thought it was going to be Disneyland. And they said, we've never seen anything like that. I've never been in a museum and seen Chicana art. I've never seen Chicano art all over a city. And that is really what started all of this. There is this desire to see yourself and your community reflected in beauty and in art. And that's why the second person in the class, I said, okay, what's next? Okay, going to California, what's next? We want a mural. I said, you really want a mural? Because we have a crazy idea for a mural. Yes, we want a mural. And they organized, they revived the Mexican American Studies Club. Voices held their car show along with Fiat. And then we met the city of San Juan. And then I, in a frantic email one night with 1 week left before a grant deadline, said, who can help me with this grant? And 5 faculty members said, we'll do it. That doesn't happen. And all of this has happened because of their desire to see this particular moment of history and their heritage, because almost every single person up here was either a farm worker or their families were farm workers, and we do surveys in your classes. The students will find your colleagues in class are either farm workers or family members who are farm workers. And so I just want to thank all of these folks for working together and making this happen. So I just wanted to kind of fill in the gaps before I turned it over to see if anybody had any questions or comments for the folks on this panel. Nobody out there has a question? Yes.
When is the expected date of completion for the mural?
The expected date for completion of the mural is actually this June.
Oh, okay.
Yes. We hopefully UTPA will sign the contract soon, and we will get started actually in the next couple of weeks.
Oh, okay.
Who's the artist that's helping out with this project?
The artist is Raul Valdez, who's actually a muralist based out of Austin. And I'm glad you asked that question, because he has over 50 years of experience as a muralist. And this is actually one of that they put up for the car show, showing some of his images. And the reason that we're working with Raul Valdez, because this is actually part of a larger project that we see. We see Raul Valdez is coming in and helping train artists from UTPA or any other areas around from the valley in muralism. And then those young people will get inspired to continue this muralism throughout the region. And so that eventually every city has a mural. Or San Juan has 30 murals. But the idea is that this is just the beginning. We know that there are many stories to be told about the Chicano and Latino experience. And this is a start to talk about one of the parts of history that's really, really not talked about. So thank you for that question. Anyone else? I saw some hands.
Do you have a model yet of a little sketch or anything that is modeled for you?
Well, right now we don't, because right now we don't. That's why we did the surveys, because we wanted to see the community's input first to see what they wanted. We were actually out in San Juan in the neighborhoods still completing some more surveys this past Saturday. So we're hoping to turn that into Raul Valdez and somehow coming up with something.
What's y'all's next move after the mural?
well, after this, right now Voces has dedicated all their time to this Bracero movement that's here in Pan Am. But for us, our next move is having the class in Pan Am back in the fall. Because since the spring of 2009, the class hasn't been operating here in the university. So we really want the class back because we want for other migrant students that come in after, when they come in and during their senior, like as freshmen, for them to motivate and stay in school because Voces actually has has high rates of retention here in the university. So we are hoping, that's our next move. I don't know about the rest of the group, but that's what we will be working on, hopefully.
And I think relating to like the mural, I mean, that same subject of our goals are to expand to all the other cities as well and have at least one mural in every city here in RGV. So that would be another move after we get this one done.
Do y'all plan, I'm talking about expanding, do y'all plan on maybe communicating with high school seniors and coming freshmen in the fall to start getting them into the idea about, maybe possibly, being part of these student groups, to make these student groups bigger for more capacity to spread the word out to all the communities in the Rio Grande Valley. Are y'all working along with that type of organizer? Or any ideas to do that?
We participate also in middle school workshops. We recently just finished a 10-week program, I would say, with the Salada Middle School. We worked with a couple of students, and what we do is we go with them and mentor them so they can also write their story, and hopefully that will motivate them to keep on going. And with the type of work we do, we don't get a lot of support most of the time. We hope that we get y'all support and pass the word down. I don't know if you remember Lucero's face in the car show. They actually wanted to get the car show down 2 hours prior the beginning of the car show, and we had planned this, and yes, the Bracero exhibit as well. We've had a couple ups and downs with people supporting us, but hopefully we can get everybody's support and keep doing this type of work and try what we want to do.
Any last comment or question for the group? Bettina. Well, I'll speak about that. And actually student organizations, they raised all the money with the help of the grants from the Smithsonian Institute to pay for the artist's honorarium. And the city of San Juan is funding everything else. So we have all of it ready. We just need UTPA to sign the contract. And we'll be ready to go. So we're ready to do this. And you may have seen the location. It's actually the facade of the City of San Juan swimming pool. And we thought, wow, this is a beautiful place to have this and see and have thousands and thousands of children coming through that to have swimming lessons and spend their summer growing up with that mural, which also happens to be directly behind the Basilica of San Juan. So it's a very beautiful, nice location. Yeah?
Have you considered getting the bishop to bless it?
If the bishop would like to do that, that's not a problem.
That would be an honor.
I think that would come from the UTPA folks.
We can work on it.
Because, I mean,
I don't see why not. And I think that I can share with you that the Basilica itself has talked about the possibility of a mural on their end. So hopefully as they're preparing for their project sometime in the future, once they see the product, that maybe even there can be some participation from a group like Cosecha. So, but definitely it is something that I know that community is embracing very much.
Yes.
Why is UTPA taking so long to sign?
That's just the way things
I
go.
mean, money's there, so like, what's the holdup?
It's just a lot of red tape. I mean, it's just, they're not fast like me. It's just slow. I suspect that's the problem. Francisco, you had one last comment from you? Or
question?
Una pregunta. Belinda, or Erika, or Andy, I know what you're ¿Por qué les importa tanto a ustedes? ¿Por qué les importa esto?
¿Por qué nos importa el mural?
Este trabajo de los murales y de las historias y todo eso, ¿por qué les importa? Porque ustedes hablan como que es algo importante para ustedes, de aquí de adentro.
Así es, pues a mí me importa porque pues, soy bien orgulloso, I have a lot of courage and pride for my culture. I'm very happy to be Mexican, and so I'm very happy for my ancestors and like all my family, what they've done, and this is the Braceros and migrant farm workers. It's what I've been doing that's me all my life, you know, being a farm worker. And plus, like I said, I'm just very proud of what I've seen with my family and just the culture, and I love the culture of it, pretty much.
Well, in my case, the same. I was raised in a migrant family. I have worked in the fields myself since I was 11, and it's just like a connection. And also, my grandfather was a bracero. He's not living. He doesn't live anymore, but I know, and my dad talks about it, and it's the connection between my migrant farm worker experience with the bracero. It's, I guess, a personal connection that I give importance.
Why is it important? Because.
Y yo creo que les pregunté que por qué era importante.
¿Por qué?
¿Por qué les importa?
¿Por qué nos importa?
Porque recién lo hacen.
Why do you do why are you doing it?
Porque somos nosotros, soy yo, somos todos, para informar a la comunidad. Muchas personas no saben ni lo que un bracero es, ni un inmigrante, y eso no está bien. Y creo yo que se debe de saber, porque por algo estamos aquí. Todos nosotros tenemos algún migrante, algún bracero en nuestra familia, y ellos son lo que hicieron. Por eso estamos aquí, por ellos, y se necesita que saber, se necesita que informar a la comunidad. Yeah.
Okay, well, okay,
May I
I'm gonna
ask
ask, Javier.
I'm a former also with the Voices, and to us, well, I'm a speaker myself, and it's important so we can stop the cycle of our migration, so we can get educated and get other people educated to succeed, and so we can stop it.
Valentina, you have the last word?
Es importante para mí este proyecto para que se sepa la historia de nuestra comunidad, porque es la historia de todos nosotros, como dijo la mayor de San Juan. Todos aquí, si no somos migrantes, fuimos con nuestros padres, y nuestra historia no está escrita en los libros de texto. Nuestros estudiantes, nuestros hijos, nuestras generaciones no conocen esta historia, que es nuestra historia, y aquí de esta región. Es muy importante que lo sepan. And having that mural up there will bring the questions from our children so that they will learn about our history, our local history that cannot be read, cannot be heard, cannot be seen anywhere, because it's not in the textbooks. It's our oral history. That it's important to us because it's who we are here in the valley. We need to change a bit the stereotypes that we're Mexicans, we're lazy, and we're uneducated. We have what it takes to get as far as we want to go, but we need to be recognized, and nobody's going to recognize us if we do not recognize ourselves.
Yes, my name is Rafael Reina. I just had a question. What type of reactions have you guys been receiving from other city leaders? And what are the obstacles that you are aware of to overcome to finalize this grand goal of kind of establishing this type of impact with these murals across the valley?
Well, we haven't had any obstacles yet. We hope that this City of San Juan example is the one that everyone else will follow. We've been very, very, very blessed, and I think that the reason we have is because Juventina's statement is one that pretty much everyone in this community can relate to. So thank you, Juventina, for those words. We're just going to take a small break now. I want to thank everybody for being here and weathering the hailstorm and everything else to be here. Just take a 5-minute break while we get ready. We're going to have Dr. Gilbert Gonzalez of UC Irvine present his documentary, Harvest of Loneliness, in a moment. So thank you very much. He's the president of the Mexican American Studies Club, and he's also the vice president of Cosecha Voices, and he'll be introducing our guest speaker.
Yes, welcome and good evening. My name is Eloy Gonzalez, and I am the president of the Mexican American Studies Club and vice president of Cosecha Voices. As part of the Mexican American Studies Club, I am deeply interested in preserving our culture and helping our Mexican American community by giving honor to those who deserve it. One of the topics within our Mexican American history that I am deeply interested in is the Bracero program, which I identify with since I myself have worked in the fields and know the struggles. I understand these braceros had it worse, and I respect their hard work. I feel that they are an essential part of our community, and I would like to honor them. Because of this, we are happy to sponsor this film screening, and I would like to introduce Dr. Gilbert Gonzalez, who is the director of the film Harvest of Loneliness. Dr. Gilbert Gonzalez is a professor in the Chicano Latino Studies Department at UC Irvine. He specializes in Chicano history and has focused on labor, community formation, education, migration, and the Bracero program. Please help me welcome Dr. Gilbert Gonzalez.
I want to thank Eloy and Stephanie for this invitation to be here. It's an honor to be here and to listen to this first group of people discussion. I think that you will see that there's a lot of connection between the documentary you're about to see and the points that they raised. I'm not going to give you any more discussion, any more talk right now. What I would really enjoy most is your comments, your questions, the discussion after the film. There's a lot of things that are raised in the film, and there's, as I said, there's a lot of connection between many of the points that were raised. So let's go forward. Sure. Thank you.
In Spanish.
Farming is America's biggest industry. All such farm jobs which are tough, dirty, or unpleasant are generally referred to as stoop labor. It isn't easy to find men willing to take on such undesirable kinds of work. Understandably then, the American farm labor supply falls short and is supplemented by Mexican citizens, braceros. In Spanish, this means a man who works with his arms and hands. The big question in many minds is, why braceros?
Yo me hice bracero porque había necesidad en la casa de ayudar a mis padres, a mis hermanos más chicos. Eran unos tiempos muy duros. Había veces que no había ni para comer. Miraba yo a mi mamá. Que lloraba. Niño.
When word came down in rural Mexico that there was this program in which they might be able to earn 2, 3, 4, 10 times as much as they ever had before in their lives. Men were greatly attracted by this possibility.
Mi esposo se dio cuenta que estaban pidiendo gente que se venía por gobernación y él quería venirse, ¿verdad? Pues a ganar otro poco más que allá, ¿verdad? Es muy duro al separarse del ser querido, porque nunca me había quedado sola.
The next step in the process was to get to what they called a migratory station. Those who came to California all had to pass through one called Empalme. When they got there, their problems multiplied.
Venía uno con las esperanzas de que si llegaba en Empalme, a los 2 o 3 días iba a pasar uno.
Ahí teníamos más braceros que pedidos de la oficina norteamericana. Ellos tenían que sostenerse allí por sus propios medios para esperar a que les fueran llamados, o sea, a llamarlos para enlistarlos para que se fueran.
Pasaban días y días y días y su nombre no aparecía. Así es de que ahí tenía uno que estar esperando y esperando. Pero como unos 2 o 3 meses.
Yo miraba a mucha gente ahí que ya tenía tiempo. Todos rompidos, todos mugrosos, pidiendo qué comer.
Me tocó ver gente comer cáscaras de plátano, de sandía, hasta periódicos, mire yo que comían y no, era duro eso, ahí fue serio la cosa.
Dormía uno donde se le hacía noche ahí en cualquier rincón.
Ponía unos cartones en el suelo y le cobraban a uno $1 diario.
Had to pay to sleep on the ground, they had to pay for drinking water, they had to pay for everything.
Cuando él lo entrevistaban las autoridades americanas, mirar las manos a ver si tenía manos de trabajador, porque si no les miraban callos a uno o las manos maltratadas, no lo pasaban a uno.
Casi siempre escogían la gente más joven, ya gente mayor los iban echando a un lado.
When they finally got through the doors of the migratory station itself, they had to go through a physical exam.
Nos desnudaban completamente todos. Nos agachaban a ver si no traíamos alborroides. Había médicos que estos 2 dedos nos los metían en los testículos. No crea que con modo, no, así. Que había muchas gentes que se desmayaban. En piquete así, nada más.
Yo nunca había pasado por eso, yo estaba muy asustado, con mucha pena, ¿verdad?, que me daba a mí.
Ahí nos afocaron las máquinas para fumigarnos con polvo de avión, con insecticida. En la cabeza, cantidad de polvo.
Conclusion. Los Braceros are a necessary supplement to our domestic crews. In Spanish, braceros means a man who works with arms and hands. But in American lingo, they are called lifesavers.
Bueno. Now's the time for discussion. Any questions, comments, suggestions? I'm afraid we can't change the film. It's done. Yes?
How long did it take to get it put together and to interview people?
From the time I wrote the proposal for funding, initial funding, till the final copy was about 4.5 years. There's a bit of time, but it went by very quickly. Yes?
I have a comment and a question. My comment is, I very much appreciate that you tied it into the present context, talking about NAFTA and contemporary
most of it came from the University of California, but we also got funding from a variety of sources. You know, internet is a way that you go out and you beg. We went out with a tin cup, and we got funding from various people. We got funding from the University of Texas in Austin. And so, yeah, it came from a variety of sources. A lot of that was the hardest part. I think the hardest part about making a film is getting the funding, which this is what we heard here too, right? That is the most difficult part. And a lot of, I mean, the camera people, the people who work the cameras were people who were just beginning. Some of them were graduate students, so we paid them half of what we would pay a professional. A lot of it was done by folks who charged less. The editor was one of them. So that's how we got by with about 85,000. That's what. That's the funding we had altogether. You have, yes.
Yeah. A few comments. The first one, the video just really hits home. Like many of us, some of us here that were at the panel, my father himself was a bracero. So there was a few times there when we had a couple of braceros who teared up. I've had discussions with my dad in the past, remembering and talking about how he would sit in his room and cry. And I always never really understood why this would happen until I, studied and went to college later and found out about foreign economic policies, such as the Bracero program, right? That looks really good on paper, all right? That was supposed to empower a lot of these braceros to help themselves. And we, like you made a comment right now about NAFTA. NAFTA looks really good on paper. It was supposed to empower the economic stability of Mexico, but we're only seeing low-income Mexicans being forced to migrate into the United States. So it pointed out something really important that I think most people don't talk about in an immigration debate is foreign economic policy in Mexico that's forcing people, not because they want to leave, not because they just want to come and take advantage of resources here, but because it's a necessity forced upon them by some economic policies that people tend to maybe ignore, or they just don't look at it strongly enough.
To look at it as a transnational question, and the way migration has been looked at is to look at the two countries as separate, and there's a problem in Mexico and there's a need for labor over here in the United States, and the two things just work together. But I think what we're saying here in the film is that the Bracero program was a program instituted in the United States that created institutionalized migration. Legal braceros and undocumented who just came across because of the Bracero program. And when the Bracero program ended, they continued coming. In California, it benefited from the continuation of braceros with papers, with contracts, or without contracts. They continued coming. So that the vast majority of agricultural workers, even today, are undocumented in California. And that was because that goes back all the way to the Bracero program. So we have to look at the policies instituted by the United States as being critical to a century of Mexican migration coming to the United States. That's one of the things that I look at as critical to understanding migration from Mexico to the U.S. So, yes?
I have a question about teaching film. You said you had some of the graduate students working on this film as well.
So, yeah.
And I know that there's going to be a film show tomorrow with Stephanie and Voces. It just seems like such a powerful way to learn and to have students explore their own histories. Just wondered if you could comment maybe in your use of film in sort of critical pedagogy.
I teach in the Chicano Latino Studies department, and in the introductory classes, I usually have a teaching assistant, a TA. And when I started studying the Bracero program, before I started the film, I asked the question of the class. There were about 60 or 70 students. How many have a Bracero in their family? And about 13 students raised their hand, including my TA. He became my research assistant. And one of the camera persons, Belinda Salazar, her grandfather was a Bracero. One of the persons that we interviewed that's on the film is the father of a colleague of mine. She was in the education department. She's now at Illinois. She recommended to me that we interview her father, and she is a faculty member. There's another not a faculty member, counselor, whose father was a Bracero, who we interviewed. And there's just so many people who came out of the Bracero program. That's why I say that the Bracero program created a generation. Just like I came out of the Chicano generation, those who came before the Depression. I think the Bracero program created another generation, and that has not been studied. And I'm learning right now. I'm learning that. Yes. Yeah.
Oh, okay. My grandfather was also a Bracero, and I just recently found out. But my question is the following. As we're interviewing my mom, she talked about how my grandpa had always said that he was thankful for the Bracero program. Did you ever come across anybody who actually said something positive came out of it?
No. And now, we went to a number of places where Braceros were meeting because of the 10% that was taken out. About 20 minutes from the campus I teach in, they're meeting in Santana, California. They're meeting in Los Angeles, and we went to those meetings. I did not hear anybody talk about that the Bracero program led to anything particularly important in their lives. Well, no, there is one person. I'm sorry, there is one person. And he talked about, he was single, and he would just jump over the line and get contracted in violation of the whole Bracero program. Where was it? Somewhere around El Paso, I think. And they would hire him, give him a contract illegally, and he told me, $3,000 over several years, which he went and he bought a house for his mother. And then we asked him, well, what do you think about a new Bracero program? And immediately he said no. He said absolutely no. For all the same reasons that many of these people said no here. For him as a single person, it was a lot different than being married and having to support a family. He just saved all the money to buy his mother a house. So that was the only person who really said, yes, I earned something out of it. But when you asked him, what do you think about a new Bracero program? He absolutely said, he was so far against that, he said no. Because he went through what all these other men went through, the suffering, the hardships, and so on, and the treatment. Because they were treated really as foreigners, as second-class workers, really. I mean, there was no respect for the contract itself. That's, in general, is what the men experienced. Yes?
Regarding the contract, the 10% that you mentioned a minute ago, I know that, and I saw, everybody hears me? Regarding the 10%, where they were giving 10% of their income, which was basically almost nothing, but they were supposed to maybe receive that back, which is another part of the contract where they lost it. I know my dad's been trying to recuperate it still from Tamaulipas, the council there. So I don't know if you know, like, if there's been a good number of braceros that are still alive that are regaining some of that money. That was basically put as a savings and social security similar to that.
Well, that's one of the reasons we were able to make the film, because they came out of, you know, their living quarters, and were meeting once a month at various places. Like one of the ways we were able to interview in Palme, in Chihuahua, in El Paso, and in several places in California was because of, they found out that 10% was taken out of their paycheck, so they started organizing and meeting, and so that's how we were able to meet so many of them. And at the same time find out that so many people around me on campus were descendants of the Bracero program, relatives of Braceros, sons and daughters of Braceros. In fact, the chair of Mecha about 5 or 6 years ago was a son of a Bracero, who's now chairman of the Board of Education in an agricultural town in California, Mendota. So, any other questions? Yes?
Were there any Mexican-American farm workers integrated with the Braceros?
Pardon?
Were there ever any Mexican-American farm workers integrated within the Braceros?
Well, they worked side by side. Well, there were in many instances there were undocumented, the Braceros, as well as the domestic Mexico-Americanos who were working together. But one of the things that the Bracero program did, and this is not the Bracero program, but so much as the growers, is the growers used the Bracero program to move the domestic workers out. And so, like several, like tomatoes, lettuce, citrus, and a couple of other products were almost exclusively Braceros. And so the Braceros became a more easily controlled labor so that they didn't have to deal with strikers and unions and stuff like that. Although there were some attempts at striking, none of them were successful over the long term. But the growers used the Bracero program to get rid of domestic labor as much as they could. Yeah. And one of the reasons in my mind why the Bracero program was put together was essentially to do away with labor unions. Because in California alone, there were 140 agricultural strikes just in California in the 1930s. And they became, a lot of these workers were Mexicanos, and not just Mexicanos, but Okies and Arkies, blacks, and so on. And some of the biggest strikes in agriculture ever occurred in the 1930s. And so the agricultural labor force became undependable, whereas at one time Mexicanos were thought to be the dependable, loyal workforce. Now they became unionists and going on strike. The last strike struck in 1941, and it struck the Limonera Ranch, which was owned by Charles Teague. Charles Teague was the president of Sunkist, worked for the Hoover administration, and who was one of the chief lobbyists in Washington for the Bracero program? Charles Teague. He was also a member of the agricultural, I think it was called Agricultural Farmers, the staunchest anti-union organization in the United States. He was one of the leaders of that group. So my feeling, based upon some research, not thorough, is that the whole Bracero program is a way of doing away with unions. Yes?
I'm just curious as to what motivated you to take on this topic? And a second part of the question is, of the stories that you heard, is there one in particular, of the stories you heard, is there one in particular, or two, or whatever it may be, that really stand out to you, and if you wouldn't mind sharing that?
Well, let's go to the first question, why? I was writing a book with Raul Fernandez on, its title is Century of Chicano History, and we wanted to do something on the Bracero program. I found out about Henry Anderson, so I went to interview him, and I thought to myself, this person is so important. Why? So I interviewed him 3 times. And one of the things I found out about Henry Anderson, who's in the story here, is that he was a graduate student at UC Berkeley. And he got into a project on the Bracero program to study their health practices, because he was into public health, working on his master's degree. And what he found out through his research, and he interviewed 1,200 Braceros. He was going to interview 2,400. One of the persons doing the interview was Dolores Huerta. Okay. So he got to 1,200, and what he found out, well, was so upsetting to him. And you heard some of the things that he said, right? He compared it to slavery. He decided to write a paper for the American Friends Service Committee, the Quakers, which was having a meeting, and he thought they should know. They asked him, can you tell us about the Bracero program? So he wrote this about 20-page paper, which I have. Anybody would like it, I could send it to them. And that paper got around the United States. The Quakers thought that this was important, because what he said in that paper is essentially what he was saying here. So he's at the University of California. This is 1958. He's, what, 26 or 27 years old. And the agricultural interests in California find out about it. To make a long story short, his project, which was funded by the National Institute of Health in Washington, D.C., was shut down. His 1,200 interviews were taken from him. All the material that he worked on was taken from him. The only thing he could write was a summary of the research that he did, but he couldn't finish it. So the project was shut down because of pressure from agricultural interests. Now, one of the things that stands out was that experience of Henry Anderson. He could not continue his research on that project because what he did was essentially condemn the Bracero program. And one of the things we have to understand too is the California Farm Bureau had their office at the University of California. And they were one of the staunchest benefactors of the Bracero program. So Henry Anderson was so turned off by that experience that he left academia. But he allowed me to talk about that, and I wrote a chapter in a book that I wrote on the Bracero program. But that experience stuck in my mind. The vast majority of people don't know about that. But his project was shut down. And I mean, interviewing 1,200 Braceros. He kept a couple of the interviews, and I heard them, and they were just like, but they were so old, they were falling apart. And he interviewed Ernesto Galarza, and we heard that one. That's the only interview that we know of Ernesto Galarza giving a public speech, talk. So he allowed us to do that. Okay, that's one experience that sticks out. But he's not a bracero, but he's defending the braceros, and he pays for it. I can't say that there's just one person. Let me go back to an experience that really struck me. At one of the meetings, the monthly meetings at a park, I found three, I call them guys, three guys that I'd like to interview. So we set up a Saturday, and we would meet at the senior center nearby. And so I asked, the three, we all met together probably at 10 in the morning, and I asked the first fellow, we set up the camera and everything, and we had a room to interview. I asked the two guys to please wait while we interview the first person. So we interview him, and as he is speaking, talking about his experience, and he goes on, and he goes step by step through things, and we get towards the end, and before we get to the end, he breaks down and cries. And he breaks down and cries because he says, nunca les he dicho esto a mis hijos, a la familia. And tears come down his eyes, down his cheeks. And so I listened to that, and we finished the interview. And it's time to bring in the other person. And I thought, I don't want to leave the third person by himself out there. Why don't we interview the next person and put the third one in the back? It was a large room. So we begin the second person. And that's Alfredo Gutierrez, who's in the film, who breaks down and cries. And when he's talking about his mother, not about himself, but about his mother, the family. And we finished that interview. And here I'm not used to this, hearing these men break down. But I have to hold myself because I'm doing the interviewing, you know. And so we finish that interview, we thank him, and we bring up the third person. As he's walking up, he breaks down and cries. And he holds his hands up to his head. And he says to us, I can't talk. No puedo hablar. No puedo. And so that was, we never could interview him. Listening to the second person we interviewed so affected him that he could not talk. And so we did not interview him. That's probably not just one person, but the three. And that really set a target for what we wanted to bring across, is the pain that they experienced and how they had held it in for so long, right? And the thing about also is that we don't know about that history. We just don't. It's sort of like, well, they came and they left, or that was back then. It's not back then, it's still with us today. And they want to start another Bracero program and bring that back together again. No.
Yeah, that's actually what I was going to ask you. Like, how does the U.S. as a society as a whole, like, remember the Bracero program, and why do you think that we don't know about it? Because I wasn't taught that in U.S. history.
Neither was I. I wasn't taught Chicano history either. You know, there was something that was said here earlier. My first lessons in Chicano history I learned at home. And really some of the more important things I learned at home. And I didn't know how important they were until I read Carrie McWilliams' North from Mexico, one of the very first books in Chicano history back in 1950. When I read that book, I said, this is what my parents told me. This is what I heard at home. Yeah, I think one of the important things that I try to emphasize to my classes is that to use your family experience as a beginning point for your studies. Especially those who had a bracero in their family. To don't put that to one side, but to investigate it at the family level. That's one of the things I want them to do. The Bracero program is not just a program that affected the Mexican community. It affected as well the Arkies and Okies who were working, particularly in California, who were working as domestic farm workers who were shoved out. It's part of the labor history of the United States as a whole. So it's a part of the history of the United States. It isn't just part of Chicano history, the Mexican history of the Mexican community. It's a larger history of U.S.-Mexico relations. Now, you had a question that I didn't answer. I went off on a tangent, but again.
Well, I guess, yeah, how is it remembered and why aren't we taught this like in a history class?
I'm reviewing a book right now. I believe his name is, the book is Dan Weathers, I believe that's his name, Walters. He's at Syracuse. It's a book that brings together all the various works, and there's not one work that I have come across that's really been an honest work that looks at the Bracero program as a good program. Unless they're writing for the State Department or for a grower outfit of some sort, you know. But for the most part, it's very, very difficult to say anything positive about the Bracero program. You have to really stretch the facts and the evidence in order to do that. But for the most part, the vast majority of people who have written about it agree that this was a virtual exploitation of labor. So
that's why they don't want to teach about it.
Well, see, when I look at the Bracero program, I ask, I grew up during the Cold War. Were I to hear that the old Soviet Union was doing this to the Poles or to another ethnic community in Eastern Europe, I would say that system is bad. How can the federal government agree to such a program as that? How can it, at the local, at the state, at the federal level, nobody tried to enforce the protections in the contract. It was just sort of violated one after another. It just went on and on and on. And I said, when I look at the Soviet Union, were they to have this kind of labor program, I would say that system is bad. But when we see it here, we sort of say, well, maybe it was a policy gone bad, or maybe it wasn't enough enforcement or something like this. I would say that, unfortunately, it's rooted in the system. If we look at agricultural laborers, and I know about California, agricultural laborers have been treated basically the same for over 100 years in the United States. It hasn't fundamentally changed. Why is that? And I think it's rooted in our economic order that needs to be changed. I think that's another discussion that needs to be raised. To look at our economic order and why is it that we have institutionalized cheap labor, institutionalized poverty, and high productivity and high profits. I think we have to look at that as, is this the way an economic order should function?
Okay.
Yes.
And I think I'm probably the last one. I just want to thank you for making the film, for being here, for letting everybody enjoy it. I've seen it before, and I saw it before. I interviewed my grandfather, who himself is a bracero, and it just runs across the whole. It's the same story. And as you said, the more you hear, the angrier you get about any human being being treated this way. You get even angrier when it's your grandfather. And the person who has 50-some grandkids and many of them gone off to university, and you start hearing about this. There's a couple of things. Well, just very quickly, one of the things that struck me is he kept talking about his compañeros and how they helped themselves survive. He talked about 3 times about a buddy from Oaxaca that he had, and he remembered his name, and he described him from head to toe what he wore, and that, so he would cook and he would do the dishes. So you don't get through something like this without having that support of each other, and you can see it in the photos where they're all together. And there's a system of support. And back when I think, well, if you go off to university, you have to have anyway. But that's a little different. But the one thing that he mentioned a couple of times, and I think I saw it once or twice in the film, is that the bracero would say, pero cumplí. Se acabó el contrato, pero cumplí. So even if the United States never respected the contract, the bracero always did. And no matter what they tried to do with him at the border, that's what kept me going. At the end, I said, you know what? They did all that, but they never took my grandfather's dignity. And they never took his word to say, me hicieron todo eso, mijo, pero cumplí. And I think that's what I took from the film and from the interview. So thank you very much for helping me see that and for bringing us to the university.
Thank you very much. Well, cumplieron. There's one statement that one elder bracero said that I will never forget. Y ya somos olvidados. Nos olvidaron. Yeah. We're now forgotten. And yet at the same time, they made, the braceros, during those 22 years, made agriculture of the United States the leading agriculture of the world. They made it really the place where the vast majority of a whole series of products were produced to export around the world. They were the key factor that made that possible. Y son olvidados. Thank you.
Dr. Gonzalez, thank you very much, sir, for all your hard work, dedication. It really shows off in the video. And I'm going to go ahead and continue something that you just said, que eran olvidados. Pues mañana los vamos a reconocer. Okay. Mañana a las 8:30 en el centro de visitantes de la universidad vamos a empezar la segunda parte de esta conferencia, donde los braceros van a ser recordados, donde ellos van a estar presentes para contar sus historias, donde ustedes van a tener la oportunidad de hablar uno a uno con ellos, preguntar sus experiencias, cómo se sintieron ellos durante esa época de su vida. Aquí los vimos de una manera, pero yo pienso que es más cerca a uno preguntarles en persona, para que ellos mismos nos puedan contar cómo fue que ellos pudieron sobrevivir durante esta época de su vida. Y los dejo con una palabra, la palabra sacrificio. El sacrificio que ellos hicieron para que otras generaciones no tuvieran que hacerlo. Les doy las gracias por haber estado aquí en esta noche con nosotros y les pido que se vayan con cuidado. Las carreteras han estado mojadas y nos vemos mañana. Que pasen buenas noches.